Dungeons and Dragons, Satan's Game. These are the experiences of two individuals as we fight our way through various evil and blood-soaked horrors known as D&D. Look and weep at the evil that awaits us. Will we survive the horrors?
I hope so.
Spoiler warning for those of you who dare to set foot. You will be spoiled.
Oh, yes.
But we'll see you at the D&D game. Well, welcome once again to another episode of Tabletop Horror. Ooh, spooky.
It's spooky.
Or not so much, depending. So, I'm going to take myself over like this. And we're going to talk about a movie called Fellowship of the Dice. This time I brought on, pretty much everybody I brought on has been in a gaming group at least at one point or another. And I wanted to have a kind of gaming group opinion. We actually have enough people here to have a gaming group, really, which is kind of funny. So it's going to be a part of that as we go. So I'm going to do my regular spiel. There's not much to this. There's some trailers on here, but there's not really a lot of extra features. It's pretty basic DVD release. Still, I like having it on DVD. It's kind of cool to have this on physical media. Any type of gaming media like this, I do love having. The background of this, I don't have much on this. There's some interesting credits that a lot of these people are known for. Many of these people have worked on bigger movies than this in their background. Matter of fact, the director is actually the guy who plays Kevin in the movie, which is interesting because he does a very convincing job of his character. So I was like, oh, he actually directed this. Okay, well, awesome for him. So plot is simple. The plot is about a woman who partied a little bit too much. She was assigned, she was basically put on house arrest and had an ankle monitor on. But she was getting bored out of her mind. Some dude approached her at a store and convinced her to come join this game. So instead of AA, she decided she was going to try to do this role-playing thing to try and figure out something to do. But this did not lead her to places that she expected it to go. And that, mixed with a little bit of documentary interview elements, is Fellowship of the Dice. So, we're going to do just basic plot discussion. I'm going to go one by one, make it a little bit easier. Though, of course, everybody can chime in about things if you bounce it off for conversation. And we'll just discuss some parts about this plot that are interesting. I mean, to me, I'll just go first and talk about the group. I mean, this is a gaming group that I know I have met pretty much any one of these characters in my time gaming, and I have felt some frustration. I even felt for Kevin when he started to go off at the end, not because of what set him off, but because of the things that led up to him going off. Because I could understand that. Matter of fact, we had somebody who was kind of in that. And I remember that he got set off so bad in one of Joe's games that he actually broke the glass door on the shop. And he had to, see, Brittany knows. He had to repair it. But it's not like, say, Tom, who broke it with his butt. But but yes, this one was a different guy. And I don't know. I just felt like I knew a lot of these people. So what are y'all's thoughts on this this plot, the characters? I'll start with you, Brittany. Let's move that.
I mean, a lot of them are very realistic. I've seen several of these people. I've been some of these people in the past. It definitely triggers me a little bit. Especially Kevin's argument at the end. I've been in that situation both as a GM and as a player. And yeah, it never gets easy dealing with those situations. But in the end, you're there to have fun. And we do kind of see that. I just feel the plot is great. It's a little melodramatic, a little bit, but I mean, they didn't have much time in this entire film to do much.
And oddly enough, I don't really know of many of these gaming movies that went to that dark place that it can go in a game. At least the arguments to that level. They've done little snippy bits like in the gamers, but they've kind of just left it as small bits instead of really the blow up that happened there. I mean, that is something that's very real and doesn't happen every game, but it does happen. It's kind of cool to see.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Dave, let's talk to you about this. What do you think?
Well, this is my first time watching it. They made her the main characteress out to be more of a criminal in the very beginning. Definitely. So, but I feel like this is a group that got together. I don't think that the DM. The dungeon master, game master, whatever you want to call him. I don't think he was special needs, but I think the rest of the group might have been special needs. If that can be as a polite word to say it. And to me, having the girl join the group, it was just like me going to a group therapy session inside of a psych ward. So to me, that's kind of how I'm looking at it from that perspective. And then, of course, this group seems to have a history with each other. And Kevin, well, he's a special case. I feel like Larry connects with the rest of the group. I feel like the Tourette's guy connects with the group in his own way. But you know, throughout the whole thing, I thought the DM's relationship with his supposed wife, I think, what's her name? I mean, he didn't even allow her to get anything out of the get-go, and she was already a mouse of a person. So, to me, that kind of triggered me because when she was going to say something, he was like, "Oh, start over again."
Well, the name of my character is Cruspula, and...
I'm sorry, can we start over? She's kind of soft. Ready.
You know, so to me, that I didn't get to the last 10 minutes of the movie, so maybe I didn't get to the blow up per se, but seeing, I did like the way the DM was explaining the game better than the guy with the blue oyster cult storyline was. Definitely. I mean, in order to be a DM, you have to have a good narrative voice and a good way of explaining things. Like, it was a dark and stormy night, and the four of them just came out of nowhere.
Cities of Flame. The characters clear the dark and dangerous caves, only to come out to a horrific sight. Harm's way, the great city by the sea, is on fire. People are fleeing every which way, pursued by our blue-robed cultists.
Ooh, can we attack them?
It's not that kind of game. Let me finish the sentence.
Oh.
Let me finish this paragraph. You're gonna like this one. They're wielding tridents, skewering everyone and everything they come near.
Oh gosh.
Okay?
Including us?
Well, no. I mean, you guys. Let me just finish.
Sorry.
You know, you got to have that beginning.
You know,
That
you know where the oyster cult guy failed, right?
Yeah, I know the oyster guy failed.
Yeah, you know why he failed, right?
He failed because nobody was connecting with his story.
Because he needed more cowbell.
Well, maybe he just needed the Godzilla song to come on. That's all. I mean,
Well, I mean, in truth, you did. Well, one of the things you did miss was her Silent Bob moment where she gave her speech.
Like I said, female Silent Bob.
But actually, real quick, and I'll give Jacob his say there. Let me go and just say something real quick about the gaming characters. You've got our main character who she's a party girl, and she's ended up coming here because she can't really party and she has to keep it low key, but she's darn well bored. She's playing with her stuffed penguins. Actually, wait, there are some special features on this because they have some deleted scenes and a few things, and they actually have her geek out about her stuffed penguin collection. So she's not quite as party girl as all of that. But then you've got Kevin, who, yeah, he does. He is somewhat special himself, but he's got a nice thing like doing a lot of game work, and he has his way of doing things, and he gets triggered very easily as time goes, and you can tell that the group kind of walks on some eggshells here and there, but has kind of built him to his thing. You've got the GM, who I think everybody's on the spectrum to a level in this group. Really, it's just the GM is the highest functioning, but he's written a 14,000 page novel.
So I'm a soon-to-be best-selling author, if you can judge by the fans' reaction to the fact that I've not actually published it yet. But Gwen and I are banking on the fact that it's going to be a big hit, and I'll probably have a career a lot like Stephen King's, where, you know, the first book just gangbusters and then goes up from there. I'm on 14,000 pages of typewritten material now.
And he has his own way of doing things. He got his wife, who is extremely shy, like cripplingly so, Gwen, I believe. And then you have Larry, who I've forgotten, who is the actor. We all have those.
I do want to jump in here real quick. The DM, even though I know you said he was the director, he kind of sounded like Ben Stein to me.
No, Kevin.
And the other
Kevin was the director.
Kevin, the director. He kind of reminded me of Ben Stein, at least up until he actually delivered the story.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the anyone, the Great Depression.
The Larry, he reminded me of the guy in the comic book store in Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, but Kevin is the guy who went off. The guy that I guess would come across as probably the lowest functioning of the group. Which
game tester?
Yeah, the
game. The one that said he was a tabletop game tester.
Yes. And then you have the other guy who's got the Tourette's, and he ex-military and kind of has less impulse control over the group.
Yeah.
And that is the group, and I'll give it back to you, Jacob. I just wanted to say these are the characters in the group that we're talking about.
Dave, did you finish with your initial?
Yeah, I finished.
Okay. So yeah, I first of all, I noticed Amy Graham apparently wrote, directed, and produced and was in a movie that came out last year. So we could have a Versus Award contender if we wanted to. So
a lot of them have actually done other things that are much bigger than this.
It's called the All Nighter. I might have to look for that. But anyway, so yeah, I too. This was my first time watching this. I had probably seen it mentioned quite a few times, but my thought of it, I could kind of relate to the main character in the sense of being sort of an outsider within an established group. I've had that a couple of times. And I have been told to my face that I'm not a good gamer on more than one occasion, or at least one occasion. On the other hand, I have done a fair bit, so I know, I feel like I know enough to talk about it overall. But I can relate to her trying to catch up, and I think I probably understood, because I've heard that frustration of people trying to deal with I've even been in the position of trying to deal with someone who has no idea what they're doing. And now I feel like Kevin took it a little far. He did come around, but one of the reasons he had a rod up his ass was he didn't want the game dynamic to change. And that
I could say something to that effect, that with somebody who has Asperger's, or at least has had Asperger's, growing up, change was not easy to deal with. If something changed, that was it took a while for me to train myself to accept that change was inevitable.
Right.
So.
And it's pretty clear that Kevin is, it's pretty clear that Kevin is one of those people that really resists change. And he has his ways. Like when he talks about beta testing, and he talks like any game that doesn't have dragons is automatically a bad game. It's gotta have dragons. That's that sort of thing. And then when the new person starts, he keeps trying to push the idea of being a half troll. And she kind of like, I don't want to do that. But he's like, but that's the way to do it.
Yes. Usually when you start out as a half troll as your first time gaming anyway, but they're being rather unorthodox and letting you choose whatever you like. So take advantage of it, but I would stick with tradition myself.
And that sort of thing. And I will admit, he was a bit much. But again, I don't know that I've ever gamed with anyone who was that, we'll say that resistant to change, that set in their ways. I have gamed with multiple people on the spectrum who probably had their particular preferences, absolutely had their preferences. But so I don't know that I've ever dealt with anyone quite that difficult as a fellow gamer. But I can also see, like, and I was talking with Brandon before, like, as far as the GM, honestly, I felt like he had a god complex. Like he comes right out and says, I love GMing because I get to be one controlling everything. And he is extraordinarily, he doesn't like being challenged. He doesn't like, and again, this is the experiences I've had. But one thing I will give him, and I do give him, is that while he doesn't like being challenged, he will seek advice and he will listen to it. And he does occasionally change his mind when he is advised. Mostly he goes to Larry and he listens to his wife when on the rare occasions, she'll speak to him and he will listen to her. But he keeps going to Larry. Larry is probably, might say, the best adjusted of the whole group. Yeah. He is an actor.
The troubadour.
Oh God, those songs were awful.
I love when he's like, they're sitting there with the argument and he tries to like sing a song. He's like, I'm not, Kevin's like, it's not time for a song, Larry. I'm not.
And then I think someone mentioned who they reminded him of. I was reminded of a younger, thinner Paul Giamatti. And the GM reminded me of a stockier, he reminded me a lot of Kevin Spacey. But like,
I think Dave did get it right.
Yeah.
He is pretty much the comic guy at and Big Bang Theory.
I haven't seen that character enough to remember him, but I feel like I might have seen a couple of those episodes. But
I actually watched Big Bang Theory like from start to finish last year. So so he's
so it's
like
fresh in your mind.
Yeah, so it's still somewhat fresh in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the way he acts is the way he characterizes with that guy. So I kept picturing him in my mind.
Right. But yeah, it was.
In a way, it is Big Bang Theory because you got your non-nerd mixing with the nerds.
Yeah, in a sense. Although again, if she has an obsession with stuffed penguins, then she's maybe a closet nerd in a sense, but not like a bad, like she's not full on. Like Penny was sort of like the same way. She had common ground with them, even though she seemed very different. She had that common ground. That, I guess, is what it comes down to with this one. Yes, this may have been a little excessive for one game session, although I think I've been in a couple game sessions that got about this heated. Maybe not quite, but I've definitely been in a lot of heated game sessions. But one of the reasons why you keep coming back is there is a sense of camaraderie that comes about. And even if you're like if someone keeps pushing your buttons over and over again, more often than not, after gaming a while, there's a lot that it's kind of your friends, and you're willing to accept a certain amount of stuff you would not normally take from anyone else. And so when the newbie almost walks out, it's fully understandable. She's ready to walk out. And it's really when the two opposing forces agree to set their differences aside that she's willing to give it another go. If they had not done that, she would have been. But she tells the guy at the very end, yeah, it was kind of worth it. Like, even though it may not have been what she would have expected to be, it wasn't what she expected, and it may, but in the end, it probably ended up doing as much for her as the AA meeting might have. And so she was willing to see that, so, overall, I thought it was an interesting portrayal, and yeah.
Well, and I will say this. The ending of this did do something that was different from a lot of them. I've noticed one thing by watching a lot of these is that there is a general run through of, well, we're going to grow up and leave the game because, obviously you can't be grown up if you're gaming. But this one actually did show that, yes, there is a dark side to gaming, but there's a reason why people keep coming back.
That's the whole thing. The whole time I was there playing, I didn't think about drugs once. I didn't think about partying or clubs or any of my old friends.
And it didn't show it excellently, but it did show it, whereas a lot of these don't show it that way. And I have to give it that point. Is there anyone else that wants to discuss some plot elements? I know we're going to try and move on relatively quickly as we go. We got a lot of chunks left. And I didn't hear a ton from you, Brittany. Is there anything else about the plot that you'd like to discuss?
As pretty much someone who would write a story and plot, and I GM'd all of you. So
14,000 pages?
I've not gotten that far that I know of.
And I'm just now getting to the point where I'm fleshing out the characters, the point where I really feel like they're just really well developed and not sketchy like some of the other genre stuff that's out there, like, stuff like Tolkien. It's kind of sketchy and not really well defined.
I do buy the GM being an egotistical control freak. The one thing I didn't buy in this film was the plotline with the cop. I really didn't. I mean, maybe it was the clearly backroom office scenes of it, but he didn't seem like a cop. They got the most sort of adult, straight-laced guy to play a cop.
He was bad cop.
Oh, no, he kind of reminds me of some. I deal with a lot of probation officers.
He was an officer Doofy.
And there are some probation officers that are pretty much as assholish as this dude was.
Yeah, from what I hear, Hanover's full of them.
Well, you know what's coming. Because of your violation, I tack on 6 more months of house arrest.
Okay.
And if there's another incident, you will be incarcerated.
Yeah. And so I could believe it. I could believe him tacking on 6 more months of this house arrest for this whole thing. And I could see her also sneaking away again to try and do the gaming, or maybe moving it to her house later on if she trusts them. Though
I could see him looking over her shoulder, trying to see what the hell kind of game she's playing.
Right.
Well, he obviously doesn't understand the whole thing. He just knows that her tracker went off, and he wants to know, and she wasn't at AA.
When she first mentions it, and she's like talking about role playing, he's like, "What is this? Some kind of sexual thing?" Like he has no idea, and I don't think he would. I don't think even if she laid it all out, he just wouldn't buy it. He has it in her mind that this is a rule breaker, that this is a troublemaker, that she broke the rule, and it's because people don't change. And that's where he's coming from. And I admit they probably played that a little harder than they needed to. But I fully bought that there would be people like that.
Oh, yeah.
Brandon, what year was this made in?
Let's see. I actually have my little folder, which has every single one of these movies, all like 50 or 60 of them.
I mean, it seemed like the same setup that I would have had in college to work with.
Let's see, 2005.
2005, so it would have been a little bit after. All right.
This was probably the golden age. The early 2000s was the golden age of these types of movies, which I'm pretty sure that the gamers kind of inspired this. I can't say it's entirely true because we did have Games Master, What Have You Done came out close enough to the gamers that it wouldn't have been influenced by it. And there was another movie called The Gamers that came out a year prior that was like a short film that also couldn't have.
Well, game-wise, we're talking 3.0. Wasn't 3.5 yet.
Yeah.
We have Vampire the Masquerade around that time. We have GURPS. We have Rifts.
I know Vampire was going pretty strong before that because Eternal Blood was 2002, and that Chilean film was a Vampire the Masquerade film.
Well, I mean, we get in the documentary part a vampire player, clearly. Now, I think he was trapped in the 90s because he looked like the mall store kid that went to the knife store. To me, with his fake dental teeth. But I mean, we see in the gameplay, in the plot, a very atypical. I said this in our chat. It's an unknown game.
Yeah.
It's basically a rough version of maybe D&D or GURPS or Rifts, to where you're playing the typical D20 rolls. I think it would have been better to have something with a little more of an established rule, because
they don't want to put the name in there because they don't want to.
Then they'd have to pay.
Take it because the gamers, they probably could have gotten away with it, and of course, Darkness Rising, they actually got the blessings of Wizard of the Coast, and gamers could have maybe because they're low enough budget, but this one actually had more of a budget, believe it or not, and was trying to be a little bit more mainstream. So because of that, I think this one actually also got a theater release, limited, but there. And, so that whole says, do you want to get sued?
Exactly.
And there are a lot of them, like, Mazes and Monsters, one of the most famous examples of that.
Tell me you already reviewed that, please.
Yes.
Knights of Badass.
Damn.
That's our first episode, actually.
Yeah.
So.
Great.
Yeah. I had to start somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, having seen played, and Jacob, you've grown as a player. I've watched you grow as a player. You don't branch out in what kind of character you play, but that's typical of you. And then Brandon is the crazy nutcase that will go all out strange with his characters. And Dave, the one few sessions we played with you, you were playing the straight-laced fighter with the brains of a straight-laced fighter.
Brains?
The brains of a what?
Straight-laced fighter. And D&D.
Okay.
And then it'd be like, oh, smash. The item smash. So I do see a little bit of a lot of games come out of this, and the GM is probably the least believable to me because he's so control freak. I've probably seen this in a DM now and then, but most of the time the GM has to be very understanding and open to think on the fly. And there have been moments you guys caught me flat-footed. I would be like, what do I call it?
Did I don't recall if you commented on this, but how would you rate him against the other guy in terms of running the game? Because I will say this, the Blue Oyster Cult dude was pretty, I thought he was pretty awful at telling a story.
Well, that's all they did. They didn't interact. Him telling it.
I would have called a sleeper walk.
Story. They can tell a bad story, but as long as the group has fun, it's fine.
Yeah. The group has to be able to participate in the story, though. To do it.
Yeah, he was not allowing the group to participate. He was telling a story, so it wasn't really a game. It was, I'm going to tell you how the story goes.
It was a visual novel, but without the visuals.
Oh,
exactly.
No action at all. Just let me tell the story.
So
well, I mean, you have
go ahead and finish.
You have two types of games. You have the role play, ROLE, and then you have the role play, ROLL. Those that want more action go into the roll concept. And I know as a group we've tended to go that way. But I played in ROLE type games, and they're amazing. I was in one that we were there for 12 hours of gameplay, and it just felt like the time just flashed by.
All right. Well, Before we move on, one other thing I wanted to ask y'all about the plot, and then we're gonna move on because we're trying to keep these reasonably short. What did you think of those magic items? Do you think those are adequate replacements for the ones that they lost? I mean, I totally think a +3 pub guide is much better than a tone mental.
That's a cool item.
I need those glasses.
Yes. Yes. What
Plus
was it?
2 glasses of reading small print.
I am the game master. I giveth, and I taketh away.
That's all right.
I could swear I heard 10, but either way.
We lost Jacob.
You went unmuted. Yeah, you muted yourself.
Oh, yeah. I said that's like the literal rules lawyer item. That's like, I joked. I was like, oh, is there a class rules lawyer that I didn't know about?
I have page numbers memorized. I am one of those rules lawyers, but I'm nice about it.
But some of them, though, it's like I was talking with Brandon before. It's like a plus, I think it was +8.
Yeah.
A placemat, welcome mat in Elvish, which the character can't speak Elvish. He has no idea what the mat says. It's a wandering adventure parter. Where the hell would you put a placemat? It's like the most useless item you could possibly get. And then the new character, he gave her what? That orc truss or something?
Yeah, the orc truss.
Like, if you put it on, it will impale you. But if you find an orc that's in pain, it's like, and it's like, yes, I understand that he gave them some overpowered items and had some second thoughts, but the stuff he gave them as replacements, that came off as just straight up trolling the party. That's really what that came off as.
Can't say I haven't done that to you guys.
Well, see, if you're going to take it away, you be creative about it. You don't just take it from them. I've made mistakes of giving people items way too powerful in the past, but I never straight up said, okay, yoink, they're gone, unless it was an appendix. But I didn't give the character the appendix at the beginning, and then I took it later.
You got this really awesome item. You got this really awesome item, but you know what? It says on the package that you need plutonium to power it, so it won't work until you find some plutonium.
So let's move on to acting. Now, I thought that as far as acting went, yes, some of them were over the top, but some were really good. And I've actually heard the guy who plays Kevin speak in other parts that he's been in, and he sounds nothing like his character here. So to me, I thought, it's like, wow, he did a really good job of playing his character. I thought all of them really did a decent job. When they're talking about B-movie, a B-level movie, I mean, the acting was not bad in this. But what did y'all think? Do y'all think the acting was pretty decent?
Other than the cop, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
Serviceable.
Serviceable, huh, Dave? Elaborate for us.
Well, like I said, the DM was believable to me to a certain extent. Larry, he was comical at best with his singing, and I liked them too. The Tourette's, I've seen people with Tourette's, and I've seen people act better with Tourette's.
Rasker Shikar! Rasker Shikar, bastard! Rasker! Niska Shikaraska!
So, or people who actually have Tourette's have played Tourette's people. So,
I did like his traffic stuff that he was yelling at in traffic, yelling Dorvis curves in traffic. So yeah, like I said, I thought the acting was pretty good considering what this was, and this was a first outing for many of these people. But they almost all, not all of them, but a lot of them went on to do other things. I mean, take a look at this on IMDb sometime, and you can see some of the cooler things that they've done. Special effects. So, of course, as we said, I mean, really, production value is more than just, special effects total. We had, the apartment. It looked like a gaming apartment. I did like how they had the DVDs turned backwards so that you didn't have to worry about the titles being shown. But I did like how they automatically called out Kevin. It's like, I'm not leaving you alone with these because they go missing. But I did think that it looked like a gaming apartment. I mean, would y'all agree that that did have that feel for?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, as far as the setting, yeah. And as far as the idea that this was pushed as a mockumentary, it did have a pretty decent documentary vibe for the most part.
Yeah.
They did intersperse it with those weird random interviews, which, again, I had to comment on the one lady who was talking about her sword. And I know Brandon and Brittany know the game that I was thinking of with that. We had the character that said they would subjugate all weapons. And then Brandon saddled him with a sentient sword that made him his own bitch. And this woman, I heard her talk, and I'm like, please, God, don't let these two ever meet.
You know, for a slight moment, I thought they were going a reality TV vibe for a moment, because the director coming out and saying something about the fact that you know, Gwen and I are this and this and this, but she could be a little bit more outgoing. And I was like, you're talking to the camera like you're a reality person, you know, like you're on you're being asked a question about your wife and how you feel about her, you know.
Yeah.
The documentary elements were pretty cool, I thought, but I don't know. After watching the last 2 episodes we've covered on this series, were both gaming documentaries. Life with a Dice Bag and Uber Goober.
Mm-hmm.
And
am I right in remembering that there was a woman that named their cat Thaco?
Maybe
in this one.
Very possible. I'm going to put us into. There we go. Make it easy. But I don't know. But yeah, this one was interesting because they did have different points of view, but it was only like the same 4 or 5 people that they interviewed. So in a way, they were characters in and of themselves.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But after watching 2 gaming documentaries in a row, one that's of lower quality, Life with a Dice Bag, which Dave did guest with us on that one, because it talked about the moving of Gen Con from Wisconsin to Indiana. And then, of course, Uber Goober, which took place the same year, but was much higher value, production value. But didn't have that cool skit at the beginning.
One thing about the production was interesting was when they talked about the previous gamers, they showed what they call, I think they said what's the GM's name? Whatever, like home video or whatever. And so that does raise an interesting question. And that is, did he record all the gaming sessions? And does everyone involved aware that they were being recorded?
He said he recorded them all, but I don't know if he informed the players he recorded them all.
Makes you wonder,
huh? See, that could have been the early Critical Role.
Yeah,
could be.
Does anybody have anything about the music that they wanted to look at? Because there wasn't much to say about music.
I seem to remember there was a good song at the end, right?
Yeah, it was a good song at the end. I like the song at the end.
The individual bard songs didn't work at all when people were singing their own bardic songs.
Yeah. They needed more cowbell.
Yes. Dave might not be with us at the moment, so.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Are you back, Dave?
I am here. I just decided to turn off my camera.
Okay. Did you have anything about the music?
I didn't really notice much. I didn't get to the end, so I probably didn't hear the end song. But nothing for me to entirely be wowed about.
So I'm going to go ahead and do one more part here where we go into final opinions before we rank these things. And that's where we just give a basic summary as to our thoughts of this. So I'm going to go first, and then I'll take to each of you to give your final thoughts if you have any. To me, Fellowship of the Dice has been one of the ones I've kind of dreaded coming back to, because when I watched it originally, I was knee deep into gaming with the groups, and I'm sure it hit home a little bit too closely, which that did bother me a little bit. But coming to it again, it does seem to have a lot more interest to me. I feel like there is an optimism to it that I was missing the first time I did watch it, and I do think it has value when it comes to these other films. It's one that I think has been overlooked by people. Most people don't see a lot of these extra films. That's why I bring them here. I want to bring attention to it, to these different films. And it did show a lot of effort. So to that, it's a great film to me. Not the best, but a good film. Jake, do you have anything?
Oh, as far as the overall, like I said before, I thought it was an interesting movie. Has got a little awkward at times. Definitely some strong emotions going on in this one, but there is some humor as well. I am generally a big fan of mockumentaries, and usually they lean a little more into the comedy and a little less into the drama. So in a sense, this was kind of interesting to see a different vibe of a mockumentary. I might have preferred a little more comedy. Certainly, as a gamer, I prefer more comedy versus more seriousness in games, but it depends on the game. I think this overall, though, it did a pretty good job of capturing the vibe of this gaming session. There were some weak points. I agree with Brittany that the scenes with the cop could have been better. But otherwise, a pretty solid film.
All right, Dave, final thoughts? Dave?
Dave?
Well, we'll come back to you, Dave. Brittany, final thoughts.
I mean, this is very much feels like the college entrance type student film. Having done documentaries in college, it had that roughness to it. They definitely could have used a little bit more production use with sound when capturing the outdoors individuals, because the sounds were very getting muddled. Tie mics, man, it's what helped that stuff. But I would say that it tells a compelling story. Yeah, it's not humorous enough to be a mockumentary, but it tells the story it wanted to tell, which is a setup with a game that, yeah, you will have at times. The more you play, I mean, I've played since the 90s. You're going to run into those situations where you're going to have a heated argument over a game, especially if you play longer and longer.
All right. Well, and Dave, final thoughts?
Yes. Well, it was entertaining, to say the least. I mean, I feel like the film focuses more on a newcomer coming into a already although they say that that group has been playing for a year together, it does in the what is it, the flashbacks as scenes go back like 2-3 years or so with the group. So to me, like it's an already set history of characters being played by people who already like kind of know each other's quirks and whatnot. So to me, it's kind of trying to show how a newcomer would come into playing with a group. This one was out of boredom, and partially because she had nothing better to do, So that being said, I think the character progressed as the stories did. She got a little bit more involved, and some of the characters just didn't want to change. So at the end of the day, it's like playing Domino Rally a bit when you have a bunch of nerds who have a great imagination, get together, and each of them tries to mesh their characters together in a way to have an adventure. So I guess it was okay. I mean, it wasn't the best and it wasn't the worst.
All right. So we have reached the end of this episode. So at the end of each episode, as always, Jake and I tend to rate these, but we'll be inviting our guests to do so as well. These are ratings 1 to 10. We're going to do one at a time. The first is the strength of the connection to the tabletop role-playing game. So how closely this actually follows tabletop. Does this feel like a tabletop role-playing game movie? And to me, yes, it does. I think it covers it very solidly, maybe a little too real at times, but maybe too dramatic at times, but definitely it hits it. I would say strength-wise, I would give it actually a 9 out of 10 because it's not perfect, but one can't say that they have not concentrated on the tabletop role-playing game the whole time of this film. So how about you, Jake? Give us that 1 out of 10.
Well, no, I think this deserves better than a 1 out of 10, certainly. I can't give it a 10 out of 10 mainly because it doesn't go too deep into the mechanics. And I think it was mentioned before, but I believe, I don't recall, honestly, was this a homebrewed system or was this just a generic knockoff system? I don't think it was an actual one.
Yeah, it's a knockoff that they...
Yeah. So essentially, in terms of trying to capture actual tabletop games, I can't really give it a 10. But I would agree that the primary focus of the movie is on this game session. And most of the interviews with convention goers are at least tangentially about tabletop gaming, and most of them are more than tangentially about it. Except for the scenes with the cop, and even those, the game is part of the discussion. Yeah, I wouldn't go a solid 9. It's more of a weak 9, but I think I could give it a 9.
All right. 9! All right. How about you, Dave? Where would you give it as far as its connection to tabletop RPGs? 1 to 10.
Well, I do not think it is about LARPing. It
just
barely mentions
no LARPing right now. We'll get to the LARPing score next.
Okay.
How strong is it?
I definitely think that this is a tabletop. I definitely think this is a tabletop movie. just goes about and does like the skating of the basics for like beginners of gaming for tabletop type stuff. I'll give it a 6 out of 10.
6. Whew. My goodness.
Tough critic.
Very tough critic. How about you, Brittany?
I'm sorry, but the Gamers is the best out of the gaming bunch of movies that I've seen. So,
nice.
This is like middle totem pole.
All right, Brittany, how would you get this as its connection to tabletop RPGs?
I mean, it definitely has a connection. I feel it's more of like a quick wrapping paper job over where they're like, we're going to hit classes, races, and the basics that you would get in a fantasy role-playing game. And that's what we do get. And I will give them a 5 for that. As far as the realism of the play, I'll give it another 2. So I'll give it a 7.
All right. Well,
I wouldn't suggest you act out what happens in this movie in a game.
Right.
So that totals us to a 7.75, which is rounded up to an 8. So it is an 8 tabletop score. Now one that will be decidedly lower, unless Dave throws us a curveball. But the LARPing score. That's how closely this is connected to LARPing. Well, not very. It's not bereft of it. It does mention LARPing very briefly. And since I've given people dressing up as characters a 2, I'll give it a 3 because it mentions LARPing. But that's about all it gets because it's definitely not over half. Just enough to say that it had something in there. How about you, Jake? What would you give this on LARPing?
I'd say there's little, if any, actual LARPing in the main session. There may have been some passing references to it. Now, in the interviews with the convention goers, quite a few of them are in costume.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like that one vampire dude definitely had a costume thing going on. So there is some LARPing, cosplay at least, but implied LARPing in some of those characters. So that's definitely worth at least a 2 to 3. I don't know if it's worth more than that. Although I did think that the vampire dude's outfit was kind of cool. It was very simple for the most part. There were a couple of the others, like the woman who had the obsession with her sword was definitely dressed up. So I might be generous and give it a 4 just because the costumes we did get amused me.
All right. So, Dave, what do you give this as far as LARPing?
Well, you either are or you aren't. And there really is no in between to me. You can't put your foot like a little bit over the line and then say that's your line, you know. So to me, I'll give it a 1.
Oh, it's a none.
I'll give it a 1.
Okay.
Okay, so
or at least mentioning it.
Well, 1 is none, no mention whatsoever. So
no, I said 1.
Right. That's what Brandon's saying. 1 is the baseline. 1 is LARPing does not exist in this movie.
Yeah.
There
is no 0 score.
1.5.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So, Brittany, what would you give this on LARPing?
Okay. They talk about LARPing. We see in the documentary part people in costume, part of LARPing. I I will disagree with the vampire guy being cool.
I didn't say he was.
But I will say, vampire / any of the World of Darkness, that is a LARPing game. You do roll dice, but you mostly LARP that game. They do a little bit. I mean, don't we get a scene where we see the main character in a bar briefly? I'm trying to remember.
I know Larry had like one or two LARPing moments out in public.
They had his law commercial, which we got to mention that commercial. I love the disclaimer because they're literally mumbling what 2 full pages.
What's coming to you? License pending. No guarantee of rewards. A non-refundable consulting retainer is due at the initial meeting. Fees are non-negotiable and not contingent upon awards received or damages owed from either litigant. All payments are compulsory and due in advance of services. Percentages of awards due to the law office of Mark Carey are above and beyond hourly, weekly, and monthly fees and are not reduced by any advance retainer or to payments judged applicable regardless of trial outcome. The law office of Mark Carey is not responsible for the views and comments expressed in this paid advertisement.
No, I mean, when she starts playing, she gets introduced. They do a scene in a pub.
I believe, yes, briefly.
Yeah.
So I will give it a 4.
All right. So that divided by. All right. So this one rounds to a 3, which I think is fair. Woo! So we have an 8 role-playing score and a 3. And
3, sir.
3 LARPing score. So with that being said, this has been our last episode of season 1 of Tabletop Horror. I hope you all have enjoyed this particular season. It's taken us a long time, I think over a year to film it. And it's hard to believe as it is. And
especially if you're binge watching the disc and you go, this took a year?
Yeah, I know. Most of these episodes are not nearly this long. I think we had one other episode go this long. And if you, of course, are watching on the disc, there is one more episode that we've included for you. If you're watching this on YouTube, well, you can buy the disc on Konami because by the time this goes up, I will have had the disc ready for sale. So hopefully this is something that you all enjoyed. Tell us in the comments if you're on our YouTube what you thought of these films. Have you looked at any of these films? But thank you all for coming in on this season. Thank you to Jake, who's been co-hosting with me and suffering with me through some of these. Bad Chilean / English dubs. The craziness and insanity that's skullduggery, or the weird nature of mazes and monsters. These have been an interesting journey. Next season, we're actually going to be hitting our stride and moving forward well into it, and we're going to actually see some LARPing films, whereas we've only kind of touched on it here. It definitely gets more LARPy from here. So we'll see you next season. Check out Brittany's channel. Let's say Danejurous Arts. Is it still?
Yep.
And of course, check out Dave's channel, Delusions of Grandeur or Inside Movies Galore, who he's taken some time out. So the rest of us from our tonight's episode, but we'll be hitting that a little bit, well, in just a few minutes tonight. And we'll see you all next season. Goodbye.
Ready.
Bye.
Ah!